My beloved brothers and sisters, I want you to go back to that night. Yes, that one. The night you felt like something inside you had completely collapsed. The night you stared at the ceiling and thought, I can't do this anymore. The night your chest felt heavy and your thoughts would not stop racing. The night you felt small, exposed, overwhelmed. You called it a breakdown. You thought something in you had shattered beyond repair. But let me ask you something gently. What if that was not a breakdown? What if that was Allah beginning a reconstruction? Sometimes when we experience deep emotional pain, it feels like destruction. We feel like we are losing control. We feel unstable. We feel like the version of ourselves we once recognized is slipping away. And that feeling scares us, because we are attached to who we used to be, even if that version of us was fragile. But Allah does not allow pain without purpose. He does not remove something without replacing it. He does not dismantle something without planning something better. You thought you were losing yourself, but Allah was removing the version of you that could not carry your future. Think about it carefully. The old version of you was too dependent on people's approval, too attached to outcomes, too shaken by rejection, too afraid of being alone, too desperate to keep what was never meant to stay. That version of you would not survive what Allah has written for you next. So Allah, in His mercy, allowed pressure. And pressure reveals weakness, not to shame you, but to show you what needs to be strengthened. When a building is being renovated, the first step is not decoration, it is removal. The old wiring must come out. The weak beams must be taken down. The cracked walls must be broken. If you walk into that building in the middle of construction, you will think it is being destroyed. Dust everywhere, noise everywhere, pieces falling. Nothing looks stable. But the architect sees the final design. Allah is Al-Alim. He sees the version of you that you cannot yet see. You saw collapse. He saw correction. You saw humiliation. He saw purification. You saw heartbreak. He saw detachment. You saw loss. He saw freedom. The reason that night hurts so deeply is because Allah was removing attachments that had grown roots in your heart. Attachments to people, attachments to plans, attachments to an image of life that was never promised to you. And when those attachments are pulled out, it feels violent. It feels unfair. It feels unbearable. But sometimes what feels unbearable is actually necessary. If Allah had left you comfortable, you would have stayed small. If He had left you secure in the wrong place, you would have never moved. If He had allowed you to keep everything you were clinging to, you would have built your identity on unstable foundations. So He allowed the shaking, and that shaking was mercy. You see, weakness is not always obvious until it is tested. You may think you are strong, you may think you are stable, but when one person leaves and your entire world collapses, that reveals something. When one rejection destroys your confidence, that reveals something. When one delay makes you question your worth, that reveals something. Allah does not reveal weakness to embarrass you. He reveals it to rebuild you. That night when you felt broken, something important happened. Your illusions cracked. The illusions that certain people would never leave. The illusion that you could control everything. The illusion that your value depended on someone else's behavior. And when illusions break, it feels like you are breaking. But in reality, you are becoming more real. The version of you before that night was surviving on comfort. The version of you after that night began surviving on faith. There is a difference. Comfort makes you relaxed. Faith makes you resilient. Comfort keeps you attached. Faith teaches you to let go. Comfort makes you dependent. Faith makes you grounded in Allah. When Allah removes a weak version of you, He does not do it loudly. He does it through experience, through tests, through moments that push you to your emotional limit. You cried not because you were weak. You cried because something inside you was being uprooted, and uprooting hurts. But look at you now. You still feel emotions. Yes, you still have moments of sadness. You still remember what happened, but you are not the same. You no longer panic the same way. You no longer beg the same way. You no longer chase the same way. You no longer collapse the same way. Something in you has shifted. That shift is not accidental. That shift is construction. When Allah removes a weak version of you, He replaces it with awareness. You become more aware of who deserves access to your heart, more aware of your boundaries, more aware of your own patterns, more aware of your reliance on Allah. Before that night, you might have thought you were strong. After that night, you learned you are stronger than you thought. There is a difference between thinking you are strong and being tested and surviving. You survived, and survival changes identity. You are no longer fragile in the same way. Not because you hardened your heart, not because you became cold, but because you have seen what loss feels like and you are still standing. When you face your worst fear and live through it, something inside you stabilizes. You realize, if I survive that, I can survive this. That realization is powerful, and that is why I say to you, that was not a breakdown. That was Allah removing the weak version of you, the version that needed constant reassurance, the version that could not tolerate uncertainty, the version that tied its value to people, the version that feared loneliness more than misguidance. Allah loved you too much to leave you in that state. So He allowed pressure, not to crush you, but to refine you. Refinement is not comfortable. Gold does not enjoy the fire. Steel does not enjoy the furnace. But without heat, there is no strength. And you, my dear brother, my dear sister, were never meant to stay soft in a world that requires resilience. Allah is preparing you for levels you have not yet seen, for responsibilities you have not yet imagined, for stability you have not yet experienced. But the old version of you could not carry that, so it had to go. That night was not the end of you. It was the end of your fragility. And fragility leaving your life feels like breaking, but it is not. It is growth. When you look back at that moment now, do not call yourself weak. Do not feel embarrassed about how much you cried. Do not regret how lost you felt. That was the moment Allah began strengthening your core. You were not collapsing, you were shedding. You were not being destroyed, you were being redesigned. And redesign takes courage. Even if you did not feel courageous at the time, you kept breathing, you kept praying, you kept waking up, you kept going. That is not weakness. That is proof that Allah was holding you while removing what could not stay. So the next time you remember that night, remember it differently. Do not see it as the night you almost broke. See it as the night Allah decided you were ready to become stronger. Because once Allah removes the weak version of you, He does not bring it back. And the version of you standing today, quieter, wiser, less desperate, more anchored. That is not accidental. That is divine reconstruction. And no one can undo what Allah has rebuilt. Lesson 2. The pain that nearly destroyed you was restructuring your soul. My beloved brothers and sisters, there was a moment in your life that felt unbearable. You know exactly which one I am speaking about. The moment you felt the air leave your chest. The moment your hands felt weak. The moment your mind kept asking, why is this happening to me? You were not just hurt, you were shaken. It felt like your entire inner world was collapsing. You questioned yourself. You questioned people. Maybe you even questioned your own strength. And deep inside, there was a fear you did not say out loud. What if I don't recover from this? But let me tell you something clearly. That pain was not sent to destroy your soul. It was sent to restructure it. There is a difference between destruction and restructuring. Destruction leaves you empty. Restructuring leaves you stronger. Destruction removes without replacing. Restructuring removes to rebuild properly. Allah does not waste pain. Every test you go through either weakens you because you resist it or strengthens you because you learn from it. And that pain you survived did something inside you. At the time, you thought it was breaking you, but it was teaching you. It taught you who truly stands by you. It taught you how quickly people can change. It taught you how fragile worldly attachment can be. It taught you that your heart was holding on to things it should not have depended on. Before that pain, you may have thought you were stable. After that pain, you realized stability only comes from Allah. That is restructuring. When Allah restructures your soul, He begins by exposing what is weak. Your over-attachment, your fear of being alone, your need for validation, your dependence on outcomes, your habit of placing people above your peace. All of that is gently exposed through tests, not to embarrass you, but to free you. You see, when something hurts deeply, It reveals where your heart was attached too strongly. And Allah loves you too much to let your heart attach to something that can abandon you. So He allows the attachment to break, and that breaking feels like the end. But it is actually the beginning of clarity. After that pain, you started seeing differently. You became more careful. You became more observant. You became more aware of red flags you once ignored. You became less desperate to be chosen. You became less afraid of being alone. That is not coldness. That is growth. Pain sharpens perception. Before that experience, you may have trusted too quickly. After it, you learned balance. Before that experience, you may have tolerated disrespect to avoid loneliness. After it, you understood your dignity. Before that experience, you may have believed that losing someone meant losing everything. After it, you realized that losing someone can actually be protection. Do you see what happened? Your soul was restructured. Your internal foundation shifted. The things that once shook you no longer shake you the same way. That does not mean you do not feel pain. It means you do not collapse under it the same way. There is a quiet strength in you now, a strength that came from surviving what you once thought you could not survive. And surviving something changes you forever. It rewrites your limits. It tells your mind you are capable of more than you thought. It tells your heart you can endure. It tells your faith Allah did not leave you. Restructuring is uncomfortable because it forces you to let go of who you were. The old you reacted quickly. The old you feared silence. The old you panicked at distance. The old you begged for explanations. The old you over-explained yourself. But the new you pauses. The new you reflects. The new you trusts Allah more than people. The new you does not chase what is walking away. The new you does not crumble at every delay. That shift did not come from comfort. It came from pain. And here is something powerful. If that pain had not happened, you would still be the old version of yourself. Still over-attached. Still emotionally unstable. Still dependent on fragile things. Still believing people are your source of security. Allah removed that illusion. And illusions never leave quietly. They shatter. That is why it hurt. But that shattering created space. Space for tawakkul. Space for emotional maturity. Space for boundaries. Space for clarity. You see, when Allah restructures your soul, He increases your depth. You no longer look at life in a shallow way. You no longer trust words without actions. You no longer confuse attention with loyalty. You no longer confuse comfort with compatibility. You became wiser. And wisdom often comes wrapped in pain. The Quran reminds us that hardship is followed by ease. But sometimes the ease is not immediate relief. Sometimes the ease is the person you become after the hardship. The ease is your new emotional stability. The ease is your new boundaries. The ease is your new independence. The ease is your new closeness to Allah. You may still remember the pain, but you also remember that you survived it. And survival rewires your confidence. There was a time you feared losing that person. Now you know you can live without them. There was a time you feared that rejection. Now you see it redirected you. There was a time you feared that delay. Now you understand timing belongs to Allah. Your soul was restructured. And restructuring means reinforcement. You are not fragile in the same places anymore. You are not shaken by the same triggers. You are not easily manipulated by the same tactics. Why? Because the pain that nearly destroyed you exposed where you needed reinforcement. And Allah reinforced you through tears, through loneliness, through dua, through sujood, through silent nights when only He heard you. That is not abandonment. That is intimacy with your Lord. You did not come out of that test empty. You came out of it deeper. And depth is strength. When a tree grows deeper roots, storms no longer scare it the same way. You have grown deeper roots. Your connection to Allah is stronger. Your understanding of people is sharper. Your trust in divine wisdom is clearer. That pain was not random. It was training for patience, training for resilience, training for discernment, training for strength. You thought you were losing yourself, but Allah was upgrading you. And once your soul has been restructured properly, the same level of pain cannot destroy you again. Because you are not the same. You are stronger internally. You are calmer under pressure. You are less afraid of loss. You are more anchored in faith. That is restructuring. And restructuring is mercy. So do not look at that painful chapter with shame. Look at it with understanding. It did not destroy you. It rebuilt you from the inside out. And once Allah rebuilds your soul, no human being has the power to reduce it back to what it once was. Lesson 3, the person they knew is gone. Allah replaced them. My beloved brothers and sisters, there is something you may not have fully realized yet. The person they hurt no longer exists. The version of you that cried over every delayed message, the version of you that over-explained to be understood, the version of you that stayed awake wondering where you went wrong, the version of you that tolerated disrespect just to avoid losing someone, that version of you expired the night Allah allowed you to feel that pain. You may still look the same on the outside, but internally something shifted, and that shift changed everything. Some people still approach you as if you are the same person. They try the same tone, the same manipulation, the same emotional pressure, the same silence to make you anxious, the same criticism to make you doubt yourself. But something feels different now, doesn't it? You don't react the same way. You don't rush to defend yourself the same way. You don't beg for clarity the same way. You don't panic at distance the same way. You don't collapse when someone withdraws. That is not because you became cold. It is because Allah replaced the fragile version of you with a steadier one. There was a time when losing someone felt like losing yourself. Now you understand something deeper. If someone can walk away from you easily, they were never your source of stability. Allah is. That realization changes posture. You no longer shrink to keep people comfortable. You no longer chase those who enjoy being chased. You no longer sacrifice your dignity to maintain connection. Why? Because pain taught you your limits. Before that heartbreak, you thought love meant endurance at any cost. After it, you learned love without respect is not love. Before that rejection, you thought your worth depended on being chosen. After it, you realized your worth is assigned by Allah, not people. Before that silence, you feared being alone. After it, you discovered that loneliness with Allah is safer than companionship without peace. That is transformation. And transformation is not loud. It is quiet. It is internal. It happens slowly through tears and reflection. But once it happens, it cannot be reversed. The person they once had access to no longer responds the same way. Not because you are angry, not because you are bitter, but because you are aware. Awareness protects you. You have seen what overgiving does. You have seen what ignoring red flags does. You have seen what self-abandonment feels like. And you decided, even if silently, I will not return to that. That decision is strength. Sometimes Allah allows people to hurt you so that you outgrow them. If they had treated you well, you might have stayed forever. If they had loved you correctly, you might have built your entire future around them. But Allah saw what you could not see. So He allowed exposure. He allowed masks to fall. He allowed inconsistencies to surface. He allowed your heart to feel the truth. And when truth enters the heart, it changes you. The old you would have ignored it. The new you listens. The old you would have justified their behavior. The new you sees patterns. The old you would have blamed yourself. The new you evaluates calmly. Do you see what happened? Allah did not just heal you. He upgraded you. Upgrades require removal. Old habits had to go. Old fears had to go. Old emotional dependencies had to go. And when those things left, they took a version of you with them. Sometimes you miss who you used to be. You miss being softer. You miss being naive. You miss trusting without hesitation. But understand something. Softness without boundaries invites harm. Trust without discernment invites betrayal. Naivety without wisdom invites pain. Allah did not make you hard. He made you balanced. You still feel. You still care. You still love. But you no longer lose yourself in the process. That is maturity. And maturity often feels like loss at first, because you lose the version of you that was easier to control. Some people are uncomfortable with your new calmness. They preferred when you overreacted. They preferred when you chased. They preferred when you doubted yourself. Now your silence unsettles them. Now your composure confuses them. Now your boundaries surprise them. But that is not arrogance. It is healing. Healing changes energy. When you stop reacting emotionally to every trigger, people lose the power they once had over you. And that shift makes them realize something. You are not who they remember. And that is by design. Allah replaced the version of you that was emotionally fragile with one that is emotionally aware. He replaced desperation with discernment. He replaced anxiety with tawakkul. He replaced over-attachment with internal stability. You still care, but you do not cling. You still feel sadness, but you do not collapse. You still remember, but you do not return to what broke you. That is growth. The Prophet ﷺ taught us that a believer is not bitten from the same hole twice. Why? Because experience is meant to educate. And you were educated, not in a classroom, but in real life, through pain, through disappointment, through nights of reflection. And once you learn deeply, you cannot unlearn. That is why the person they once had access to is gone. You are not healing from that pain anymore. You have integrated it. It is part of your wisdom now. It informs your decisions. It guides your boundaries. It protects your peace. You may still forgive, but you do not forget the lesson. You may still love, but you do not lose yourself. You may still hope, but you anchor that hope in Allah, not in people. That is the replacement Allah gave you. A calmer heart, a clearer mind, a stronger connection to Him. So if someone tries to hurt you the way they once did, they will find something different. They will find patience instead of panic, silence instead of desperation, distance instead of self-abandonment. And that difference is proof that Allah did not let you suffer for nothing. He replaced who you were with someone stronger. And once Allah replaces a fragile version of you with a stable one, no human can reverse that transformation. You are not who they knew, and that is mercy. Lesson 4, Allah shifted your dependence so no human could break you again. My beloved brothers and sisters, there was a time when your emotional stability depended on someone else. If they were kind, you felt secure. If they were distant, you felt anxious. If they approved of you, you felt worthy. If they withdrew, you felt small. Your heart was attached, not in a healthy way, but in a way that made you vulnerable. And Allah saw that. He saw how deeply your peace was tied to people who could not guarantee it. He saw how much power you had given to human beings. He saw how your happiness rose and fell based on someone's mood, attention, or presence. And because He loves you, He did not leave you there. So He shifted your dependence. But that shift did not feel gentle. It felt like loss. It felt like abandonment. It felt like rejection. It felt like silence when you needed answers. It felt like distance when you wanted closeness. But what was really happening? Your heart was being redirected. When everything fell apart, when the person you leaned on was no longer steady, you had nowhere to run except to Allah. And that is where the transformation began. You started making dua with a sincerity you never had before. You cried in sujood in a way you never had before. You whispered to Allah in the dark when no one else was listening. You felt alone, but you were not alone. Allah was slowly teaching your heart a powerful lesson. People are not your foundation. He is. Before that shift, you thought certain people were your safety. After that shift, you realized they were only temporary support. Temporary support is not wrong, but it cannot be your source of security. When your heart depends fully on people, you will always be unstable because people change, people leave, people misunderstand, people fail, people disappoint. But Allah does not. He does not wake up in a different mood. He does not withdraw His mercy randomly. He does not love you one day and abandon you the next. When Allah shifts your dependence from creation to creator, He is strengthening you in a way no human can undo. That is why you cannot be broken the same way anymore, because the place your heart stands on has changed. You are no longer standing on fragile ground. You are standing on tawakkul. And tawakkul is not passive. It is not weakness. It is deep internal stability. It means you still love, but you do not cling. It means you still trust, but you do not idolize. It means you still hope, but you do not collapse when plans change. Before that painful shift, losing someone felt like losing oxygen. Now you understand something deeper. If Allah removes someone, He removes them with wisdom. And if Allah keeps someone, He keeps them with purpose. Your peace is no longer held hostage by someone's presence. That is strength. There was a time you feared being alone. Now you know loneliness with Allah is safer than companionship without peace. There was a time you overthought every silence. Now you allow silence to exist without panicking. There was a time you chased clarity from people. Now you seek clarity from Allah. That shift is everything. When Allah becomes your primary anchor, human behavior loses its power over you. If someone stays, you are grateful. If someone leaves, you are stable. If someone praises you, you remain grounded. If someone criticizes you, you remain anchored. Because your worth is no longer tied to them, it is tied to Allah. Do you see what happened? The pain that forced you to turn to Allah was not cruelty, it was elevation. Allah does not want your heart enslaved to people. He wants it connected to Him. He does not want your peace controlled by unstable emotions. He wants your peace rooted in certainty. When your heart shifts its reliance, everything changes. You stop begging for reassurance. You stop chasing validation. You stop tolerating disrespect to avoid being alone, because you know something now. If Allah is with you, you are not empty. If Allah is protecting you, you are not abandoned. If Allah removes something, He replaces it with something better, even if that replacement is internal growth. And once that understanding settles in your heart, it becomes very difficult for someone to break you the same way. They can leave, you will still stand. They can misunderstand you, you will still be at peace. They can try to shake you, but you are anchored deeper now. Because your dependence is not horizontal anymore. It is vertical, upward, toward Allah. And that kind of dependence is liberating. You still love people, but you do not worship them emotionally. You still care deeply, but you do not collapse when things change. You still hope for good outcomes, but you trust Allah more than outcomes. That is maturity. And maturity born from pain is powerful. When Allah shifts your dependence, He is protecting your future. He is making sure no human has the authority to control your emotional stability again. You may still feel sadness. You may still feel disappointment, but you do not feel devastation the same way. Because devastation happens when your foundation is removed. And your foundation is no longer people. It is Allah. That is why I say to you with certainty, this was not random. Allah did not allow that painful detachment without purpose. He was teaching your heart where to stand. And once your heart stands on Him, no human can push you down the same way again. You are not less loving. You are more anchored. You are not colder. You are clearer. You are not distant. You are grounded, and that grounding is mercy. Because once Allah shifts your dependence to Him, you cannot be broken by what is temporary. You can feel it now, the quiet strength, the calm response, the reduced anxiety, the ability to let go without losing yourself. That is not you becoming numb, that is you becoming anchored. And once a heart is anchored in Allah, it is no longer easily shaken by creation. That is the gift hidden inside that painful shift. Allah did not remove your support. He replaced it with something stronger, Himself. Lesson 5. What humiliated you taught you your real value. My beloved brothers and sisters, there was a moment in your life when you felt small. Not physically small, but emotionally small. You remember that feeling. When someone dismissed you, when someone replaced you, when someone made you feel like you were not enough, when someone treated you as if you were optional. That feeling of being overlooked, ignored, or disrespected can cut deeply. It touches your ego, it touches your self-worth, it makes you question yourself. You may have asked quietly, why was I not chosen? Why was I not valued? What did I do wrong? And that moment felt humiliating. It felt like your dignity was shaken. But let me tell you something gently. That humiliation was not there to reduce your value. It was there to reveal it. Sometimes we do not realize how much we have lowered ourselves until we feel the sting of disrespect. You tolerated things you should not have tolerated. You excused behavior that did not honor you. You stayed silent when you should have spoken. You accepted less because you were afraid of losing more. And Allah saw that. He saw how you were shrinking to fit into spaces that were too small for your soul. He saw how you were adjusting your standards to keep someone comfortable. He saw how you were overgiving to people who undervalued you. And because He loves you, He allowed exposure. Exposure does not feel good. When someone shows you exactly how little they value you, it hurts. But that hurt opens your eyes. It forces you to ask uncomfortable questions. Why am I accepting this? Why am I fighting to stay where I am not respected? Why am I lowering my dignity to maintain connection? That is where growth begins. You see, before that humiliation, you might have thought you knew your worth. After it, you truly understood it. There is a difference between saying, I deserve better, and actually feeling it in your bones. When someone treats you as replaceable, it triggers pain. But it also reveals something powerful. You were placing your value in their hands. You were waiting for them to confirm what Allah had already assigned. And that is dangerous, because human beings are inconsistent. One day they praise you. The next day they criticize you. One day they choose you. The next day they leave. If your worth depends on their behavior, your worth will always feel unstable. Allah does not want your dignity fluctuating with people's moods. Your value was never up for negotiation. It was assigned the moment Allah created you. You are a servant of Allah. You were honored by Him, given life by Him, given intellect by Him, given a soul breathed into you by Him. No human can increase that honor. No human can decrease it. But sometimes we forget. Sometimes we act as if being chosen by someone adds value to us. Sometimes we act as if being rejected removes value from us. That humiliation you felt shattered that illusion. You realize something important. If someone can treat you carelessly, they are not your measure. If someone can walk away easily, they are not your source. If someone can belittle you, they do not define you. That awareness is powerful. Before that experience, you might have feared losing people. After it, you fear losing your dignity more. That is maturity. You no longer fight to be kept. You no longer beg to be understood. You no longer chase those who are comfortable losing you. Why? Because you learned something. The right people do not need to be convinced to value you. The right people do not make you question your worth. The right people do not humiliate you to feel powerful. And if someone humiliates you, it says more about their character than your value. Humiliation hurts the ego, but it strengthens the soul. It burns away illusions. It removes desperation. It exposes self-abandonment. And once you see clearly, you cannot unsee. There was a time you would have tolerated disrespect to keep someone. Now you would rather walk away with your dignity intact. That shift did not happen randomly. It happened because Allah allowed you to taste what it feels like to be undervalued. Not so you would hate yourself, but so you would stop undervaluing yourself. Sometimes Allah allows someone to treat you poorly to teach you what you should never accept again. That lesson is priceless, because once you learn it deeply, your standards change. You become selective, you become firm, you become calm in your boundaries. You do not shout, you do not argue. You simply withdraw access. And that quiet withdrawal is powerful. It says, I know who I am. Before, you were afraid to lose them. Now, you are afraid to lose yourself. That is growth. You realize that your value does not increase when someone praises you, and it does not decrease when someone rejects you. It is constant because it comes from Allah. If Allah created you with purpose, who is a human being to declare you worthless? If Allah wrote your rizq, your relationships, your future, who is a human being to make you feel replaceable? People can walk away from you, but what is written for you will never miss you. That realization protects your heart. You stop chasing what is not written. You stop grieving what was never yours. You stop shrinking for approval. Instead, you stand firm, calm, grounded, not arrogant, not bitter, but aware. The humiliation that once made you cry now makes you stronger because you see it differently. It was not proof that you were unworthy. It was proof that you were in the wrong place. And Allah removed you from that place, not to punish you, but to protect your dignity. Sometimes losing someone is Allah saving you from continued humiliation. Sometimes being rejected is Allah redirecting you. Sometimes being overlooked is Allah reserving you for something better. When you internalize that, you stop reacting emotionally to every dismissal. You understand something deeper. Your value does not come from being chosen. It comes from being created by Allah. And once that truth settles in your heart, it becomes very difficult for someone to make you feel small again. You may feel hurt, but you will not feel worthless. You may feel disappointed, but you will not feel inferior. Because now you know you are not defined by who walked away. You are defined by who created you. And that is why what once humiliated you has now strengthened you. It taught you your real value. And once you know your value, you cannot unknow it, and no one can take it from you. My beloved brothers and sisters, there is another layer to this lesson that many people miss. Humiliation does not only hurt because of what was done to you, it hurts because it exposes where you were compromising yourself. And Allah, in His mercy, does not allow His servant to live in self-betrayal forever. Before that painful moment, you may not have noticed how often you were bending yourself out of shape just to keep peace. How often you were staying quiet when something inside you was screaming. How often you were accepting emotional crumbs while telling yourself it was enough. From the outside, it looked like patience, but on the inside, it was exhaustion. Allah allows humiliation when patience has turned into self-neglect. And that is an important distinction. Patience for the sake of Allah elevates you. Patience that erases your dignity drains you. You see, Islam never taught us to tolerate disrespect in the name of goodness. Islam teaches us dignity. The Prophet ﷺ walked with humility, yes, but never with humiliation. He forgave, yes, but he did not invite repeated harm. He was gentle but never weak. And Allah wanted to teach you that balance. So He allowed that moment where you felt exposed, where you felt replaced, where you felt dismissed, where you felt like your effort meant nothing. That pain woke you up. It made you stop and ask yourself, why am I trying so hard to be accepted here? Why am I staying where I am clearly not honored? Why am I explaining my worth to someone who has already decided not to see it? Those questions are uncomfortable, but they are necessary. Because growth does not come from comfort, it comes from truth. And the truth was this: you were asking people to treat you well while you were not treating yourself well. That is not judgment, that is realization. You were giving access too easily. You were over-giving without balance. You were placing loyalty where there was no responsibility. And Allah allowed humiliation to stop that pattern. Humiliation is painful, but it is also clarifying. It strips away denial. It forces you to see people as they are, not as you hoped they would be. And once you see clearly, your behavior changes. You stop over-explaining. You stop justifying disrespect. You stop chasing closure from people who gave you clarity through their actions. You start protecting yourself not with anger, but with boundaries. And boundaries are not walls of hatred, they are doors of wisdom. A boundary simply says, this behavior no longer has access to me. That is not cruelty, that is self-respect. Allah does not want you to become bitter. He wants you to become aware. There is a difference. Bitterness hardens the heart. Awareness strengthens it. After that humiliation, you did not become heartless. You became selective. You did not stop loving. You stopped over-giving. You did not stop caring, you stopped abandoning yourself. That is healing. And healing always changes standards. Before, you were afraid to lose people. Now, you are afraid to lose your peace. Before, you stayed quiet to be liked. Now, you stay silent to stay dignified. Before, you tried to fix situations alone. Now, you step back and let Allah reveal truth. That shift did not come from advice. It came from experience. Allah teaches through experience because experience rewrites behavior. Words inform the mind. Pain reforms the soul. And Allah, knowing your heart, chose the method that would reach you. There is something else humiliation teaches you. It shows you that being chosen by people is not the same as being valued. Someone can choose you for convenience. Someone can keep you around for comfort. Someone can benefit from you without honoring you. And once you experience that, you stop confusing attention with respect. You stop confusing familiarity with loyalty. You stop confusing tolerance with love. That clarity protects your future relationships, because now you choose differently. You no longer ask, do they want me? You ask, do they honor me? You no longer ask, how can I keep them? You ask, is this pleasing to Allah and safe for my heart? That is a higher level of thinking. That is maturity. And maturity often comes after humiliation, because humiliation humbles the ego and elevates wisdom. It removes the need to prove yourself. It removes the desire to compete. It removes the urge to explain your pain to people who do not listen. You learn silence, not the silence of suppression, but the silence of confidence. You realize that you do not owe everyone access to your story. You do not owe everyone emotional labor. You do not owe everyone forgiveness without accountability. Islam teaches forgiveness, yes, but it also teaches justice. And justice begins with how you treat yourself. Allah does not ask you to keep returning to what breaks you. He asks you to learn, and you learned. You learned that your heart is amana, a trust. Not everyone deserves access to it. You learned that dignity is not loud. It is quiet consistency. It is walking away without announcement. It is choosing peace over proving a point. It is trusting Allah to restore what was taken. And here is something beautiful. Once you learn your value properly, Allah begins to protect you in ways you did not notice before. Certain people stop having access to you. Certain situations no longer last long. Certain red flags become visible early. That is not coincidence. That is Allah honoring the lesson you learn. He does not test you again the same way once you pass the lesson. That is why the same humiliation does not repeat. The environment changes. The people change. Your reactions change because you changed. And the most powerful part of this lesson is this: the humiliation did not come to make you feel worthless. It came to detach you from places where you were being undervalued. It came to restore your self-respect. It came to teach you that your worth does not come from being wanted. It comes from being created by Allah. And once that truth settles deeply in your heart, you stop chasing validation. You stop proving yourself. You stop shrinking. You start walking with calm certainty, not because you are better than others, but because you know who you belong to. You belong to Allah, and Allah does not create anything without value. So if someone failed to see your worth, it does not reduce you. It exposes them. And Allah removed you from that space before it damaged you further. That is mercy, painful mercy, but mercy nonetheless. So do not regret the humiliation. Do not replay it with shame. Do not wish it away. It taught you what comfort never could. It protected you from staying too long in the wrong place. It restored your dignity. And once dignity is restored, it becomes very difficult for someone to make you feel small again. You may feel pain, but you will not feel worthless, because now you know your value was never in their hands. It was always with Allah. Lesson 6. You walked through the fire and discovered you were not glass. My beloved brothers and sisters, there are moments in life that feel like fire. Not a small flame, not a passing discomfort, but a fire that surrounds you. A fire that feels suffocating. A fire that burns your expectations. A fire that melts your plans. A fire that tests your patience beyond what you thought possible. You remember that fire. It was the betrayal you never expected, the loss you never prepared for, the rejection that shook your confidence, the silence that echoed louder than words. At that moment, you were certain of one thing: this will destroy me. You truly believed it. You believed that your heart would never feel normal again. You believed that your mind would never be peaceful again. You believed that you would never be the same again. And in one sense, you were right. You would never be the same again. But not because you were destroyed, because you were refined. When something fragile enters fire, it shatters. But when something strong enters fire, it strengthens. Glass breaks in heat. Steel is forged in it. And Allah did not treat you like glass. He treated you like steel. You thought the fire meant you were weak, but the very fact that you survived it proves otherwise. There were nights you cried until your chest hurt. There were days you walked around functioning, but internally exhausted. There were moments you wanted to escape your own thoughts. There were du'as you made through tears. And still, you are here, breathing, standing, reflecting. That is not fragility. That is resilience. The fire did not remove your ability to feel, it removed your illusions. It burned away the parts of you that were overly attached. It burned away the parts of you that feared loss more than Allah. It burned away the parts of you that depended too heavily on people. Fire exposes composition. It shows what something is truly made of. And when you walked through that test, you discovered something powerful. You are stronger than you thought. You can survive heartbreak. You can survive rejection. You can survive loneliness. You can survive disappointment. The very thing you feared most happened and you endured it. That changes you, because once your worst fear becomes reality and you survive, your fear loses power. Before that fire, you were afraid of losing them. Now you know you can live without them. Before that fire, you were afraid of being alone. Now you understand that being alone does not mean being abandoned. Before that fire, you feared the unknown. Now you trust that Allah writes what you cannot see. That is strength. Not loud strength, not aggressive strength, but quiet internal strength, the kind that does not need to prove itself. The Prophet Ibrahim, peace be upon him, was thrown into literal fire. The people wanted him destroyed, but Allah commanded the fire to be cool and peaceful for him. Understand this deeply. Fire only burns when Allah allows it. Your trial felt like fire, but Allah placed limits on it. It hurt you, but it did not end you. It shook you, but it did not break you. It tested you, but it did not erase you, because Allah decided you would walk out of it. And if Allah decided you would walk out, nothing could keep you inside. Sometimes we misunderstand the presence of fire. We think if Allah loved us, there would be no flames. But love does not mean absence of trial. Love sometimes means elevation through trial. Fire purifies gold. Pressure strengthens foundations. Hardship refines believers. Allah does not send fire to destroy His servants. He sends it to prepare them. You could not have become who you are today without that heat. Comfort would have kept you soft. Stability would have kept you attached. Security would have kept you dependent. The fire forced you to grow. It forced you to stand on your own feet. It forced you to strengthen your connection with Allah. It forced you to confront your fears. It forced you to accept that control belongs to Allah, not you. And once you accept that, anxiety reduces because you stop fighting reality. You stop trying to control every outcome. You stop clinging to people who are not meant to stay. You begin to say, if Allah wills, it will remain. If He does not, I will survive. That sentence alone is powerful because survival builds confidence. You survived what you thought would destroy you. That realization stays with you. Now, when new challenges appear, you do not panic the same way. You may feel nervous, but you do not collapse. You may feel uncertain, but you do not lose yourself. Why? Because you have evidence from your own life. You have already walked through fire once and you came out standing. That memory becomes your strength. It whispers to you in new trials. You survived before. That whisper is tawakkul growing inside you. You do not need to be fearless. You just need to remember. Remember how far you have come. Remember how deep that pain was. Remember how convinced you were that you would not recover. And then remember that you did. Recovery does not always look dramatic. It looks quiet. It looks like waking up one day and realizing you are not crying as much. It looks like hearing their name and not feeling the same sharp pain. It looks like thinking about the past and feeling calm instead of panic. That is healing, and healing after fire is strength. You are not the same, but you are not weaker. You are deeper. You understand loss differently. You understand trust differently. You understand reliance differently. You no longer see fire as the end. You see it as a phase. You see it as training. You see it as refinement. Allah did not allow you to burn without purpose. He allowed you to feel heat so you would discover your composition. And your composition is not glass. You bend, but you do not shatter. You feel, but you do not collapse permanently. You grieve, but you do not lose faith. That is powerful. And once you know that about yourself, it changes your posture. You walk differently. You speak differently. You choose differently. Because you are no longer afraid of fire the same way. You know it will hurt, but you also know you will endure. And endurance builds confidence in Allah. It builds certainty that no trial arrives without permission and no trial lasts forever. The fire had a time limit. The pain had a duration. The test had an expiration date. You did not know it at the time, but Allah did, and He carried you through it. That is why you cannot be broken the same way again, because you have been forged. Forged people do not fear the furnace. They respect it. They understand it. They grow through it. And you, my dear brother, my dear sister, have already walked through flames you thought would consume you. Yet you stand, not perfect, not untouched, but stronger. And once Allah refines you through fire, no human can easily reduce you back to fragility. You are not glass, you are steel. And steel does not fear heat once it has survived it. Lesson 7, you are not healing anymore. You are now unbreakable. My beloved brothers and sisters, there was a time when every conversation about your pain felt raw. You were healing. You were recovering. You were trying to move on. Everything felt fragile. You measured progress by how little you cried. You measured strength by how well you hid it. You measured healing by how long you could go without thinking about it. But something has changed. Quietly, without announcement, without dramatic realization, you are not in survival mode anymore. You are not constantly managing pain anymore. You are not waking up every day feeling like you are fighting something invisible. There is a stability now, a quiet firmness. And maybe you have not even fully acknowledged it. You are no longer healing. You have healed enough to stand. There is a difference. Healing is when you are stitching wounds. Unbreakable is when the wound has become strength. Healing is when you are trying to recover. Unbreakable is when you know you can survive again. The old you feared repetition. What if this happens again? What if I get hurt like that again? What if I lose someone again? What if I fail again? Those questions once haunted you. Now they do not carry the same weight. Not because you believe pain will never come again, but because you believe you will survive it again. That is power. You no longer fear pain the same way. You respect it, but you do not fear it. You understand something now. Your worst fear already happened, and you lived. Your deepest heartbreak already came, and you survived. Your greatest disappointment already arrived, and you endured. So what is left to terrify you? You have evidence now. Evidence that Allah carried you when you thought you could not walk. Evidence that your heart can break and still beat. Evidence that your tears can fall and still lead to clarity. That evidence builds something inside you. Conviction. You no longer say, I hope I survive. You say, Allah carried me before. He will carry me again. That sentence alone changes how you face life. You are not walking cautiously anymore. You are walking consciously. There is a difference. Cautious is fear-driven. Conscious is wisdom-driven. You still protect your heart, but not out of panic, out of understanding. You still set boundaries, but not out of bitterness, out of clarity. You still choose carefully, but not out of trauma, out of growth. You are not avoiding life. You are engaging with it from strength. Before, you reacted emotionally. Now you respond calmly. Before, you overthought every silence. Now you let silence exist without losing yourself. Before, you feared abandonment. Now you trust that what is written for you will remain. That is unbreakable. Unbreakable does not mean you never feel pain. It means pain does not erase you. Unbreakable does not mean you never cry. It means tears do not define you. Unbreakable does not mean life becomes easy. It means difficulty does not dismantle your identity. Your identity is no longer tied to who stays. It is tied to who created you. Your value is no longer attached to being chosen. It is attached to being written. Your peace is no longer dependent on someone's consistency. It is rooted in Allah's constancy. That foundation cannot be shaken easily. People can leave, but they cannot take your stability with them. People can misunderstand, but they cannot remove your worth. People can criticize, but they cannot dismantle what Allah has rebuilt. Because what Allah rebuilds is not surface level. It is internal. It is structural. It is deep. You are not the same emotionally fragile person you once were. You have seen disappointment. You have seen betrayal. You have seen loss, and you are still here. You still pray. You still hope. You still believe. That is unbreakable faith. You may not feel powerful every day. Some days you still feel tired. Some days you still remember. Some days you still feel sadness, but sadness does not shake you the same way. You process it, you reflect on it, you move through it, you do not drown in it. That is growth. You used to think strength meant never being hurt. Now you understand strength means not being destroyed by hurt. There is a difference, and that difference is maturity. When Allah rebuilds you, He does not simply repair the cracks. He reinforces the foundation. He removes what made you unstable. He strengthens what made you vulnerable. He deepens your reliance. He clarifies your boundaries. He purifies your intentions. So even if life tests you again, and it will, you will not face it as the old version of yourself. You will face it as someone who has already survived. You will face it with experience, with tawakkul, with internal stability. You are not naive anymore. But you are not bitter either. You are balanced. That balance is rare, and it is earned through tears, earned through patience, earned through sujood, earned through nights when you whispered, Ya Allah, I cannot do this alone. And Allah answered, not always by removing the trial, but by strengthening you within it. That is the greatest answer. Sometimes we ask Allah to change our situation, and instead He changes us. And once you change, situations lose their power over you. You are not healing anymore. You are living with wisdom. You are living with discernment. You are living with trust. The fire has already touched you. The humiliation has already shaped you. The loss has already matured you. What is left now is strength, quiet strength, stable strength, the kind that does not need validation, the kind that does not seek applause. The kind that walks calmly, knowing that Allah is enough. You cannot be broken the same way again. Not because life will stop testing you, but because Allah already rebuilt you from the inside. And once Allah rebuilds something properly, no human being can undo it. You are not fragile anymore. You are anchored, and an anchored heart is not easily shaken. My beloved brothers and sisters, there is a stage after healing that many people do not talk about. It is not loud. It is not dramatic. It does not come with a celebration. It comes quietly. It comes when you realize that what once controlled you no longer does. There was a time when the thought of them could ruin your entire day. Now you remember and you remain steady. There was a time when uncertainty made your chest tight. Now uncertainty feels uncomfortable but not devastating. There was a time when losing someone felt like losing oxygen. Now you understand that your breath was never in their hands. That shift is not small. That shift is the evidence of divine rebuilding. You are not fighting the pain anymore. You have integrated it, and integration is stronger than recovery. Recovery means you are trying to return to who you were. Integration means you have become someone wiser because of what happened. You no longer want to be who you were before the test. You see now that the old version of you was too easily shaken, too easily impressed, too easily attached, too easily hurt. And Allah loved you too much to let you remain that fragile. So He rebuilt you, not by removing your softness, but by strengthening your foundation. You still feel deeply, you still care deeply, you still love deeply, but you are not dependent the same way. And that is the difference between fragile and unbreakable. Fragile hearts depend on outcomes. Unbreakable hearts depend on Allah. Fragile hearts panic when things change. Unbreakable hearts say Allah is still in control. Fragile hearts chase what leaves. Unbreakable hearts let go and trust what is written. You are not fearless. You are anchored. That is what makes you unbreakable. An anchored heart may sway in the wind, but it does not uproot. You used to think strength meant never being affected. Now you understand strength means being affected but not erased. You may feel sadness again in life. You may face new tests. You may experience new disappointments, but something inside you will remain steady because you have evidence now, evidence that Allah carried you before, and that memory changes everything. When you walk into a new challenge, you are not the same person who once collapsed. You are the person who once survived collapse. That changes your posture. It changes your reactions. It changes your fear. Fear loses intensity when you have already faced your worst case scenario. You once thought, if this happens, I won't survive. It happened, and you survived. That realization builds quiet confidence. Not arrogance, not pride, but internal certainty. You are not afraid of being alone anymore, because you have been alone and you discovered you were not truly alone. You are not afraid of losing people anymore. Because you lost people and Allah remained. You are not afraid of starting over. Because you were forced to start over and you grew. That is unbreakable. Unbreakable does not mean untouched. It means transformed. And transformation is permanent. When Allah rebuilds you, He does not simply patch the cracks. He removes what made you vulnerable. He changes what made you dependent. He strengthens what made you unstable. You have become less reactive, less desperate, less anxious, not because life became easier, but because your relationship with Allah became stronger. And that is the real rebuilding. The world may not see it. People may not recognize how much you have grown, but you feel it. You feel it in your silence. You feel it in your calm responses. You feel it in your ability to walk away without drama. You feel it in your ability to say Alhamdulillah even when things are uncertain. You are no longer begging life to be different. You are trusting Allah through whatever comes. That is unbreakable faith. Before, you wanted guarantees. Now, you want guidance. Before, you wanted certainty about outcomes. Now, you want certainty about Allah. That shift is maturity, and maturity born from pain is powerful. There is something else you may not have realized. The people who once had the power to break you no longer do. Not because they changed, but because you did. They can try the same behavior. It will not land the same way. They can say the same words. They will not shake you the same way. They can withdraw. You will not collapse the same way, because the version of you that depended on them is gone, and Allah replaced that version with someone steadier, someone wiser, someone grounded, someone who understands that human beings are temporary but Allah is eternal. You have learned that attachment must be balanced. You have learned that love must be dignified. You have learned that reliance must be vertical before it is horizontal. That knowledge protects you. And protection is strength. You are not living in fear of being hurt again. You are living in awareness. Awareness changes choices. It changes who you allow close. It changes how much access you give. It changes how quickly you attach. Not out of trauma, out of wisdom. There is peace in that. A deep, quiet peace. The kind that does not depend on constant reassurance. The kind that does not crumble at minor setbacks. The kind that trusts that whatever Allah removes was never meant to stay. You are not healing anymore. You are walking with clarity. You are walking with boundaries. You are walking with tawakkul. And that combination is powerful. Life will still test you. But tests do not terrify you the same way, because you now understand something deeply. If Allah allowed it before and carried you through it, He will do it again. And once you internalize that, the fear of breaking disappears. You may bend, you may feel pressure, you may need time, but you will not shatter, because Allah already rebuilt you from the inside. And once Allah rebuilds something properly, it does not collapse under the same weight again. You are not who you used to be. You are steadier, stronger, anchored, unbreakable, not because you are perfect, but because your foundation is no longer people, it is Allah. And a heart built on Him does not collapse easily. My beloved brothers and sisters, there is something beautiful about the way Allah writes stories. When you were inside the pain, you thought you had reached the end. You thought this chapter was the final one. You thought what broke you would define you forever. You thought, this is it. This is how my story ends. But Allah never intended that moment to be your ending. It was your turning point. The problem is, when we are in the middle of the storm, we think the storm is the whole sky. We forget that clouds move. We forget that night turns into morning. We forget that Allah never writes pain without purpose. You were not being buried. You were being planted. There is a difference. When something is buried, it is forgotten. When something is planted, it is prepared for growth. The darkness you experienced was not abandonment. It was incubation. Seeds grow in darkness. Roots deepen in silence. Strength forms under pressure. Allah was not closing your story. He was redirecting it. You thought losing that person meant losing your future. You thought that rejection meant you were not enough. You thought that delay meant you were forgotten. But look at you now. You are wiser. You are clearer. You are less desperate. You are more anchored. Would you have become this version of yourself without that test? Probably not. That test carved something into you. It carved humility. It carved resilience. It carved dependence on Allah. And those qualities are not small. They are foundations for elevation. Elevation does not begin with comfort. It begins with breaking attachments. Elevation does not begin with applause. It begins with isolation. Elevation does not begin with ease. It begins with pressure. Look at the lives of the prophets. Before leadership came isolation. Before victory came struggle. Before elevation came testing. Allah does not elevate without refining, and refining is uncomfortable. The version of you before the test would not have been ready for the next level Allah is preparing. You might have misused it. You might have depended on the wrong people. You might have built your future on fragile foundations. So Allah strengthened you first. You call it heartbreak. Allah calls it preparation. You call it loss. Allah calls it protection. You call it delay. Allah calls it timing. Everything you experienced had alignment behind it. Even the tears, even the confusion, even the nights you felt abandoned, Allah was aligning your heart before aligning your circumstances. Because elevation without internal stability is dangerous. If Allah had given you what you wanted when you were still fragile, it might have destroyed you. If He had kept certain people in your life while you were still dependent, it might have distracted you. If He had opened doors while you were still emotionally unstable, you might have walked through them for the wrong reasons. So He slowed you down. He stripped you back. He rebuilt you. And now, you are standing at a different level, not visibly to everyone, but internally. You are no longer chasing what once consumed you. You are no longer afraid of losing what was never written for you. You are no longer begging for doors to open. You are waiting with patience. That is elevation. Elevation begins in the heart before it appears in life. You may not see dramatic changes yet. You may still feel like life is ordinary. But something inside you is not ordinary anymore. Your perspective changed. Your reactions changed. Your attachments changed. Your reliance changed. And once your internal world changes, your external world follows. Allah does not waste pain. He transforms it into wisdom. He transforms it into maturity. He transforms it into stability. And stability attracts the right doors. You are no longer asking, why did this happen to me? You are beginning to ask, what was Allah teaching me? That shift is powerful because victims ask why. Believers ask what? What is Allah shaping inside me? What weakness is He removing? What strength is He building? That mindset is elevation. Your story did not end in heartbreak. It deepened. Your story did not end in rejection. It redirected. Your story did not end in humiliation. It restored your dignity. The version of you that thought life was over was simply unaware. Unaware that Allah was writing something bigger. When we read a book and reach a painful chapter, we think everything is ruined. But the author sees the entire story. Allah sees the entire timeline of your life. He sees the people you have not yet met. He sees the opportunities you have not yet encountered. He sees the peace you have not yet experienced. He sees the doors that will open. But those doors require a stronger version of you. And now you are that stronger version. The fire did not destroy you. It purified you. The humiliation did not reduce you. It dignified you. The loneliness did not erase you. It strengthened your reliance. And that reliance is what carries elevation. Allah raises those who trust Him. Allah strengthens those who endure. Allah honors those who remain patient. You remained. You did not turn your back on Him. Even when you were confused, even when you were hurt, even when you did not understand, you stayed, you prayed, you hoped, you endured. That is not weakness. That is proof of faith. And faith is what Allah elevates. The end of your old version was the beginning of your higher version. You thought something died, and something did. Your fragility died. Your dependency died. Your desperation died. And in its place came strength, came clarity, came tawakkul. You are not who you were. And that is a blessing, because who you were could not carry what is coming. This was not the end of your story. It was the beginning of your elevation. You are not walking toward emptiness. You are walking toward alignment. Alignment with Allah's will, alignment with your purpose, alignment with your real worth. Trust the process, trust the timing, trust the one who rebuilt you. Because when Allah prepares someone in silence, the outcome is always greater than they imagined. And your story is still being written, not by people, not by circumstance, but by Allah. And that is why you cannot be broken again. Because your life is not in fragile hands. It is in His. My beloved brothers and sisters, let this settle in your heart tonight. Nothing that happened to you was wasted. Not the tears, not the loneliness, not the humiliation, not the nights you felt forgotten. Allah was not ending your story. He was editing it. He was removing characters that could not walk into your next chapter. He was closing doors that would have trapped you. He was reshaping you so that when elevation comes, you can carry it without collapsing. You thought you were falling behind, but Allah was pulling you back so He could launch you forward properly. This is not the end. It is the calm before alignment. It is the silence before clarity. It is the pause before progress. You are no longer the person who breaks under pressure. You are the person who has already survived it. And when Allah prepares someone in private, He does not expose them publicly until they are ready. Trust Him. Your story is not over. It is just beginning, this time from strength.